guys, if you don't know me, my name is Jerallisha. This is going to be one of the hardest videos I've ever had to record. By the title, you can already tell. I had a huge life experience that I wish on no one at all. I'm still going through it, like I'm still struggling every day, but this is just kind of the first video to like a series to let you guys who's been through the same thing know that you're not the only one and how to cope and just keep living for your baby. But I'm just gonna get right into the video. Okay, so in October of 2017, late October, my period was late. I was like, oh shit, like yikes. So I took a test, me and my boyfriend. We ended up already suspecting it before I took the test, but I took a test. It said I was pregnant. And then from there, I told my whole family, my boyfriend, like everyone who's close to me. I told all of them. The first 2 months of my pregnancy, completely normal, completely healthy baby. Everything was fine. And then 2 months later, when you have the midterm checkup, they kind of tell you everything that's happening and what's going on. So mine wasn't normal, so she was like, you have a healthy baby, nothing's wrong with the brain, the heart, anything like that. Then she was like, we're probably gonna need you to come back in a week because, you know, I'm seeing something that's irregular. So they weren't really specific with me at first about what was going on. But this was February 14th. I was already about 19 weeks pregnant. And I already know I was having a boy. And so, like, all the, you know, shopping and stuff, I was excited. I was shopping every day. I had a lot of stuff for him, actually. And I was planning my baby shower, you know, everything you do when you're pregnant. So I was really excited. Like, I was ready to be a mom, which I know I'm super young, and adults that are older than me are like, you weren't ready at all, and all the negative things. But honestly, I was, because I was raised by a wonderful mom. So I was definitely ready to take on that role. So like I was saying, they did the mid checkup ultrasound, had me go to another room so my doctor at the time could look at it. She came in and she was like, you have like an incompetent cervix or something like that. I think that's what it's called. And she's like, we're going to keep an eye on it for about a week. And in a week, if you come back and it looks worse, then we'll send you straight to the hospital. So a week goes by and I come back. You know, they do the checkup, the finger exam, everything like that to check the cervix. She opens me up and looks at me, and then she was looking at my cervix and she's like, it doesn't look worse, but it doesn't look better, so I'm going to send you to the hospital so you can get their insight. So at that point, I drive myself to the hospital. Yeah, I think my mom was with me. She actually took me to the hospital. Yeah, okay. So my mom was with me. We go to the hospital. I call my boyfriend, like, hey, babe, I'm at the hospital. Something's up. He gets off work early. He comes to the hospital. This is all, like, a week after February 14th, like February 20-something. We get to the hospital. The professional surgeon that does, like, delivers babies and stuff, he comes in. He checks my cervix. I'm telling you, I had my cervix checked, like, 1,000 times. Like, I'm not even joking. He checks my cervix, and he's like, you're open about 1 centimeter dilated, so you should be fine, but I do recommend the stitch. So he was recommending me the stitch. I denied it just for the reason that he said he could see my water bulging, which is never a good thing. So with the stitch, he would have had to use a catheter to push my water back in, which could have caused a rupture and the baby to come in 19 weeks. So I was like, no, I'll just wait it out, stay off my feet. I will tell my job that I'm on bed rest. I'll do anything to not get the stitch because I don't want to risk having him too early. So another few days go by. I kind of already knew I was going to have some type of preterm labor because my baby was a little over a pound and my back was like killing me really bad. Like, I was only 5 months. Usually your back starts hurting around 7-8 months when he's super heavy. My back was hurting, my feet were swelling, my stomach, I wasn't really having stomach pains because he was kicking me and stuff. That was normal. I wasn't having any contractions at the time. So At this point, when I deny the stitch, the doctor's like, we're going to check on you every few days. So I'm going in for every few day checkups. And then on March 2nd, I went in for a checkup, and he was like, it's still at 1 centimeter, hasn't moved in the past 2 weeks, so we're just gonna let you do light work on your feet, because I sit at a call, like I work at a call center, so I sit down all day. So he was like, it's fine, you go back to work, everything like that. So I'm like, cool, you know, I can go back to work, I can make sure that my baby has everything that he needs when he gets here. So I was fine with that. I was gonna stay off my feet. He was like, you could do moderate walking, just not too much. So I followed those directions. I'll probably go to like 1 store a day instead of walking around all day shopping for baby clothes all day. I would just limit myself to 1 store just to kind of stay off my feet. So that Monday I was supposed to return back to work, March 5th, sorry. I was supposed to return back to work, but I had woke up that morning, and I have white. As you can see, everything is white, my comforter and my sheets. I woke up that morning, there was yellow fluid stain on my sheet. And I was like, I haven't leaked at all. Like, I didn't even have spotting when I first got pregnant. I didn't have any fluid, anything like that throughout my pregnancy. So I was like, this just isn't normal. So then I call my mom, and I tell her, like, Mom, there's something in my bed sheets. This is before I take my morning pee, so I haven't even peed yet or anything like that. It's like, there's something in my bed sheets. She's like, do you think it's your water? And I was like, I really don't know. And then she was giving me like the decision, do you want to go to work or do you want to go to the hospital? And at the time I was like, I want to go to work. I don't think it's that big of a deal. And then my mom is the reason I ended up at the hospital. She was like, no, you need to go to the hospital because you're leaking, which means something is up. So because they had told me I was 1 centimeter the Friday before, that Monday, I was thinking everything was fine. Also, I forgot to mention that they put me on progesterone about 2 weeks prior to the appointment on March 3rd when they told me it was cool to go back to work. So I was on progesterone, the insert. You have to insert the pill in you every night before bed so it can build your cervix back up, because my problem was my cervix was opening. So we thought that would be working, but that Monday I went to take my morning pee and there was a blood clot in it. So it looked like, you know, when your period's ending and you have the little blood clots that come out. It was only one of them in my pee. So I was like, oh my God, I haven't bled this whole time. I haven't bled in 20 weeks. Why am I bleeding now? So that freaked me out, and that was really the main reason I went to the hospital that day. So March 5th, I go to the hospital. The same doctor checks me again. He was like, I can still do the stitch, but your water is poking way more than it was, and you're about 3 centimeters dilated. So in those 2 days, from March 3rd to March 5th, I dilated 2 extra centimeters. So he was like, the only thing with getting a stitch this time around is that it's way more riskier for you and the baby. So therefore, basically, my experience was that the hospital and the people that were surrounding me while I was pregnant was just very negative. Like, the hospital never gave me any positive outcomes for any of the options that they offered me. And I'll keep telling this story so you can see kind of how the hospital treated me. So he checks me, he shows me, he draws a picture for me to show me how far out my water is. So at that point, it's like here's my cervix. My water is like to the end of my cervix, like right before the vagina. So he was like, we're gonna admit you on bed rest to make sure that you actually stay in the bed and don't go in your feet. So they admit me that night, March 5th, on bed rest, strictly bed rest. But the ward that they put me in was the same ward with the moms that lost their babies, and I didn't realize this until after I had my son. So I'm in that ward right now, still pregnant, not having too many issues for the first few hours that I'm there. My mom and my boyfriend finally leaves the hospital, and so I'm there by myself for a few hours. I took a shower, but let me tell you, the pain that I was in, it was like an 8 out of 10 with no contractions yet. My back was killing, my feet were hurting, I couldn't really bend or twist certain ways. Like, it was painful. So I took my shower, everything like that. And then around 11:15-ish, My best friend walks in because she was going to spend the night with me at the hospital because I didn't want to be alone. Around 11:30, my stomach starts like tightening really bad. Ooh. Ooh, wee. Ooh, Jesus. Ooh. Ooh. And I had to fart. All at the same time. Ooh, shoot, that hurt real bad though. Anywho, I'm just waiting on the doctor to come check me. I'm 22 weeks and 1 day. I've been at the hospital since, what's today? March 6th? Since the morning. I'm so tired. I can't even take myself serious. Since the morning of March 5th. And hopefully nothing happens because he needs to stay in there longer. All right, checking out. My stomach starts tightening and I was having like full on birth contractions. Like, no joke, they hurt so freaking bad. So I started tracking them like I was in a healthy labor. Instead of calling a nurse right away, I kind of wanted to make sure it was contractions. So I let an hour go by and I hit my nurse button because they started getting uncontrollable. So the nurse comes in, she checks me. I'm telling you guys, I was checked way too many times. With this condition that I have, the cervix incompetence, I shouldn't have been checked that many times because it kind of irritated my cervix and my baby. Like, he was snatching from nurses when they were checking me. So the nurse checked me and she was like, I feel baby parts, right? And then he would snatch back, like, don't touch me. My son had a little bit of an attitude. So she was like, I feel baby parts, and that freaked me out. So then another nurse comes in and checks me because she's like, I need a second opinion. So the other nurse comes in and checks me. At this point, I'm just really irritated and in so much pain. I'm just like, get this baby out of me because I'm over it at this point. Like, too much pain for my body to bear. So they come in, the other nurse checks me. She's like, whoa, you're 6 centimeters dilated. I'm 22 weeks and 1 day. And they just came in and checked me. Earlier, I was 3 centimeters dilated. Now I'm 6 centimeters dilated. I had 2 nurses check me 2 different times. And just now they said they could feel baby parts. And I'm way too early, so please pray. They said if PHARAOH comes this week, they're not going to be able to do much for him or connect him to any machines. He's just going to be on his own. So please pray for me, guys. I'm trying to stay as strong as I can, but this is so scary. They're sending me to labor and delivery right now. This is like 5 hours after I've been admitted to the hospital. She was like, you're 6 centimeters dilated. We're rushing you into labor and delivery. This is around 1 in the morning. I called my mom and I told her, go get my boyfriend and come to the hospital because something's about to happen. So they rushed me to labor and delivery, get me admitted there, get the baby bed, everything set up for the NICU. I forgot to tell you guys that earlier that night before the contractions, the NICU guy came in. He was such an asshole. Like, I hope he sees this because he needs to figure out how to not be an asshole. So he comes into my room. He gives me basically no options until I basically snap on him. So he comes in my room. He's like, because your baby's only 22 weeks old and probably underweight, and his lungs aren't going to work well at all. So what we'll do is after you have your baby, we'll let him lay with you until he takes his last breath. That's what this doctor told me. When he told me that, I was like, I was hurt because I'm like, here I am in a place that's supposed to be helping me save my baby, and you guys are giving me no options at all to save my kid. So at that point, I was like, wow, so this is my life now. I'm about to lose my son, and no one in this hospital gives a flying fuck. So there was one nurse, Jenny, that really did care about me. I'll give her that. I really do love her for that. But everyone else, they were assholes. So after the NICU doctor tells me that, I'm like, no. What we're going to do is we're going to try to get tubes in his nose so he can breathe and try to feed him so that he can stay alive. So he was like, cool. They wanted me to sign my will, everything like that, because they thought, you know, something could go terribly wrong. So I did all that. Let them know that everything that was mine would go to my mom. So all the scary parts were just beginning. I thought that was the scary part. Not at all. So fast forward back to the part of the story that I was talking about. They moved me to labor and delivery. As soon as my boyfriend and my mom gets there, they have everyone but my boyfriend escort the room, which they really didn't. My mom and my best friend and her mom just kind of stood behind the curtain. And they give me the epidural. And I tell you, the epidural was the worst pain. Like, my back still hurts till this day. And it's been like 4 months. But the epidural really sucked. It really did. And, but it helped only the left side of my body. So I could still feel contractions on the right side of my body. What I really hated about this whole experience is that they didn't do an emergency C-section. They wanted me to try the natural way first with a preemie baby. When I tell you my son was only 1 pound and 4 ounces, he was tiny. They made me go through 13 hours of contractions.
Girl, you still look pretty. No, I don't.
Yes, you
I
do.
look tired.
They made me go through 13 hours of contractions. So I started having contractions at 11 a.m. the night before. 11 p.m. the night before, March 5th. I had contractions all the way until 3 o'clock p.m. on March 6th. All I could eat was ice, because everyone knows when you go into labor, all you can eat is ice. I was scared. I was truly scared. And then it got to a point where it was like 6, 7 in the morning. And a nurse that came in and said, the doctor wants us to turn the monitors off. Because my contractions were getting so bad to the point where it was squeezing my baby to death, literally. So I would have a contraction. His heart rate would drop to 0 until the contraction was over. And then it would shoot up to like 215, which means he was panicking. Like, get me out of here, basically. I wish there was something more that I could have done. Because still to this day, I don't feel like I did everything that I could. And it's just the guilt. Because it's like, I love this little human being. And he was my firstborn. And now I don't have him. And it's like, every day I just wish that he would come back. Or that I could get him back. And I know reality really kicked in when I got his ashes back. But like I was saying, when I was having contractions for 13 hours with a tiny baby fighting for his life. These contractions were like labor contractions, full-term labor contractions. My baby kept dying, and the nurse came in and she was like, we're gonna unplug the monitors because we don't want you to see anything else or hear anything else. I went off. I said, this monitor is the only thing keeping me fighting for my child. Because me hearing that heartbeat come back after a contraction makes me proud. Like, makes me a proud mom. Because he's still in there fighting and you guys aren't giving me a C-section like you should be. So anyway, we get to about 3:15 p.m. in the afternoon on March 6th. A nurse comes in and checks me because around like 4 a.m. I was already 10 centimeters dilated. I know this story's like going everywhere, but I'm trying to get all the details in, but I keep forgetting and skipping stuff. So 4 a.m. I was like full 10 centimeters dilated. I want to say around 5:40 something a.m. Because they gave me the epidural, so there was no more walking around or going to the bathroom on my own. The nurse comes in. this is when I lost all hope. And this is when I prayed all day, but I still didn't have that hope, because I was wishing and I was praying that I did something differently. So it's 5 something in the morning. The nurse comes in, I tell her I have to use the restroom, and she's like, we're gonna have to give you a catheter. So she puts the catheter in. She puts the catheter in me. As soon as she puts the catheter through my urethra, my water just breaks. And she's like, you might be peeing on yourself. And I know for a fact I've never peed gallons of water. Like, you know when your water breaks as a mom. My water broke, and she tried to lie and say I was peeing on myself, so I wasn't worried about anything. First of all, this is my child that you guys are not taking the initiative to do further precautions to keep him alive. And you're going to tell me that you didn't just break my water? You did just break my water when you put that catheter in me. That's how I felt at the time. I was angry. I was like, I was holding on to that water sack for the past 3 weeks, fighting for my son, and now my water is broke, so now it's for sure that I'm going into labor. So after she puts the catheter in, I go through like 8 more hours of contractions. So back to the 3 o'clock p.m. on March 6th. The nurse comes in and checks me. She puts her hand to check my cervix, and she's like, I feel baby parts, and he's snatching away from me, so it's time to push. So my boyfriend's on one side, holding one leg up, and my mom and my aunt are on the other side holding my other leg up. So I start pushing. I'm pushing for about 10 minutes at the most. I'm pushing, and then she finally reaches. The nurse finally reaches in to see what's coming out. It was my son's arm. Like, you guys go to school for years to tell me to push, but you're making me push my son out by his arm first. Then when she tells me it's his arm, my legs are in the air, she's like, do you want to keep pushing? And I was like, no, you can give me a C-section. Because if I would have kept pushing, my baby would have came out mangled. Like, I get that he probably would not have survived, didn't have a high survival rate, but I was still fighting at that point. And I was about to push my baby out and break all of his bones, because I'm just going to give you guys a visual. Here's my vagina. Here's his arm, right? So he's still laying on the side. So his head was like on my left side. So if I were to push him out, his body would have came out like this, crunched up. So I'm thinking to myself, as I'm pushing, I'm like, I want a C-section. So I tell her, I'm like, give me a C-section. So finally, after 13 hours of contractions and my baby's heartbeat dropping to 0, they decided to give me a C-section after having me push his arm out. So the type of C-section they gave me was a T-cut incision, which means they had to cut me like all the way to about right here, mid-stomach, and across where the uterus is, because his arm was already pushed out. They had to pull him up and out. So I had a really risky surgery to save my son, or at least try to. So they ended up rolling me to the C-section room around about 3:20 something. My boyfriend wasn't allowed in because it was a high-risk surgery, which kind of sucked, because if you have healthy babies, they are allowed in, but he wasn't allowed in because he had to rush to the NICU with the NICU doctor after they handed the baby over. So I get in the room, they put me on the bed, they start cutting on me, and I was like, I can feel that. Like, please don't cut anymore, because I can feel that. It wasn't pressure, like I could feel them cut my skin. So the doctor ends up putting me to sleep. This is when it gets really hard for me, because not only did I lose my son, I wasn't able to see myself give birth to my son. I wasn't able to get that experience of a happy birth for my first child. I bought all the stuff he needed. We were really prepared, even without the baby shower yet. I just had everything, and he put me to sleep. No, my son was born. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like all over the place. My son was born at 3:24. They rushed him to the NICU. This is my boyfriend's side of the story. When they're rushing him to the NICU, I'm still under, of course. They put me to sleep. They kept trying to resuscitate him. His heartbeat came back 4 times. My boyfriend got to a point where it was like, I'm tired of losing him. So after 4 times to try to bring him back, my boyfriend just told the nurses, let him go. Because that's basically what you have to do, because I went through 13 hours of contractions. When I seen my son for the first time waking up, he had already been passed away for like 3 hours. Trying so hard not to cry. He had already been gone for 3 hours. So when I see my son, I see what my body did to him within the 13 hours of contractions. He was bruised up. His skin was like coming off. Like because he was in my vaginal canal when the contractions were happening. It was beating him up like a boxing match. That's why his heartbeat kept dropping. So my boyfriend called it, which I don't regret it at all, because it was like he kept fighting every time they brought him back, but his heartbeat didn't last long. It kept dropping to 0. He kept dying on us. So basically, when I woke up, the first thing I asked the nurse was, because they had me in recovery room, is my son okay? She was like, yes, but he's in heaven and he's okay now. So it was the first person to tell me that my son was deceased was the nurse. Then she asked me, did I want to see my son? So my whole family and my boyfriend's family comes walking in. Oh, Jesus. My whole family, my boyfriend's family comes walking in. And I remember it. My boyfriend was holding our son. He was so tiny. He was so beautiful. Like, I made that. That was me. I made that. He was beautiful. And then till this day, I wonder what he may look like, what his skills would be at a 4-month-old baby, how happy I'd be, because I am going through it. Like, I wish he was still here with me. So I held my baby for the first time, and he was already dead. And he was cold. I did skin to skin. He was freezing. I screamed, I cried. I asked God why. I was mad at God the first 90 to 120 days after I lost my son. I was angry. Like, why me of all people when I'm such a good person? That's what I kept asking him. It was just a really hard experience. So I did skin to skin. I held him for like a good 20 minutes. After that, they took him to clean him and stuff, wheeled me back to my room, and then that's when I realized I was in the same ward as some moms that lost their babies before I even had my baby. So the doctors kind of already had no hope for me. But they took me back to my room. I had my son in a little glass bed. I'll insert a video somewhere in this video. It's a little glass bed wrapped up in his blanket. I'd never held him again after the skin for skin, the skin to skin, because it was hard. It was hard for me. So the first night, they cleaned him. It took about 8 hours because they took pictures of him and they had to preserve him, so he had to spend a few hours in the freezer as well. But about 8 hours, they brought him back into me about 2 in the morning. And he was gone. But my head at the time, because I was on so many drugs, from the C-section and stuff. My head at the time was, just watch your baby all night and see if he moves. See if God brings him back and gives him back to you. So the whole time I'm laying in the bed, I can barely sleep. I'm just watching his bed. I put the flashlight on him, just trying to see if he'll move, because that's just the mom in me. Even though I lost my baby, I still wanted to see him move or cry or whine or just come back to me is all I was thinking. So I had him in there. The same day he passed away, I kept him in my room for 24 hours. They have the new cuddle cots that come with little freezer things, but his body was getting warm, so they ended up taking him back for a good half a day to stay in the freezer, cleaned him up again, brought him back to me in a bassinet. And that time my boyfriend just held the bassinet and looked at him. We put him on my little tray. There's a little tray they give you at the hospital for all your food. We put him up there until the nurse came and got him, and that was my last time seeing him in flesh. The C-section was really painful to heal from, and the hardest part for me about losing my son was having to see all the baby clothes packed up when I came back, having to see everything in bags and seeing my mom having to take that back because I wasn't strong enough to. Also leaking milk. So the next day is when I started to leak milk, and I would bawl. Like, I would just cry out, like, why? Because I have no one to feed anymore, and he had just started kicking me and stuff right before he was born, but I had no one to feed. So me also handling the loss of my son and leaking milk, it was hard. And seeing that I had to take everything back that I bought him like Dr. Seuss books and clothes, Pampers. I miss him, man. I miss him so much. I have several pictures of him that I took in the hospital. The hospital gave me pictures. I'll probably do a video on the stuff I got from the hospital and other people. But he was really small. I'm sharing my story so that other moms out there who have experienced the same thing as me will know that they're not alone. And it's really hard for moms and dads to even speak out about these situations because they live with you your whole life. It's your firstborn, your secondborn, your thirdborn. No matter how many kids you had prior to losing one, it's always gonna hurt. And it's still fresh for me because my son was born March 6th. And so it's only been about 4 months. Those of you guys who want to know what I named him, his name was PHARAOH Zell Raymond, and his dad's last name is Raymond. My grandfather's middle name was Zell, so I named him after my grandfather with the middle name. And then PHARAOH, I literally had that name in my head since I was about like 8 or 9. If I ever had kids and it was a boy, I was going to name him PHARAOH, so that's what I did. But I want to thank you guys for watching this video. If you have any feedback or any comments, questions, anything like that, you can leave it in the comments or follow me on social media. You can message me privately. I'm thinking about making this maybe like a 5 or 6 video series with how to cope, the box that I have with all his stuff in it, and just the process of how to keep living without your baby, because it's really hard. It's a process for me to get out of bed every day, actually, but I'm getting back on track, and eventually in the future I will have more kids, and I will also document that to show people there's a light after the dark side of the tunnel. But I love you guys. Even if you don't know me, I love you. I have love for you. I'm always caring. You can always come to me about anything. And I hope that you enjoyed this video somewhat, because I know a lot of people were questioning what exactly happened with my labor and delivery story. But thank you for watching, and I hope you click that subscribe button so that you can see more of my content. And